Well, hello everyone in the studio and around the world watching on YouTube or Vimeo. My name's Maurice and I've got another study in the parable series. We're up to number 26, so we've had a lot of parables and there's lots more to go at. This is from Luke 16, verse 1 to 13, so let's read it. It's the unjust steward. This is Jesus talking. And he said also unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. To beg I'm ashamed. I resolve what to do, that when I'm put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, how much do you owe my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, take thy bill and sit down quickly and write 50. And he said to another, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, take your bill and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, the wicked steward. The Lord commended him because he'd done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourself friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when you fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore you've not been faithful in unrighteous mammon, riches, who will commit to you your trust, true riches? And if you've not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he'll hate one and love the other, or he'll hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Interesting, eh? We've got a parable, the unjust steward, which has given us lots of problems, because the Lord commended him, and he was a wicked man. How am I going to answer that? Well, I've got revelation. I didn't have last time I preached it through. I had to fudge it because I didn't have the revelation. And you probably have a problem, but God's given me revelation so I can explain it. But then after the parable, he goes on to a whole dialogue about riches. And if you're not steward of your riches, how will God give you true riches? So finance must be very important to a Christian, mustn't it? Because that's the example. If you can't handle your riches, bread, spondulux, the acres, whatever you call your riches, your money, then how can God give you true riches? Because he's watching how we live in the flesh to decide how we live in the spirit. You know, for a deacon, it must be of a good report for them in the world to be a steward of God's heritage. You know, God's looking how diligent you are at work to see if you could look after God's people. If you can't be a good manager in your workshop, how can God promote you to be a manager of God's people? So it's very important how you treat your wife. If I can't treat my wife right, how can I treat other Christians? How can I be a pastor and look after other people if I can't bring my own children up? So can you see, we think we get all spiritual, but actually God's looking at the real us, how we live our life as a parallel. Because he can't give us true riches. He can't give us a church to look after if I can't look after my wife and my family. Can you see? So this is not to condemn us. We all fail somewhere, don't we? But I don't want to keep failing. I want to be convicted to say, okay, God, I'm going to address this area. So let's start the parable. I've not started yet. That's just a little preamble, a little intro. Who was the parable spoken to? It's important to know the context. Some of the parables he talked to the multitudes, didn't he? If any man will follow me, that's any man, take up your cross, deny yourself. This one, was to the disciples. And he said also to his disciples. So this wasn't to the crowd, it's to disciples. And it's about stewardship, isn't it? So it wasn't to the Pharisees, it wasn't to the lawyers, it wasn't to the scribes, it wasn't to the followers, the multitude, God's people, it was to the disciples. And it's obviously a parable about accountability, isn't it? He'd misused his master's finances. It's all about money. So when it said he was an unfaithful steward, it was to do with finance. It must be, because afterwards he talks about finance. That's all he talks about. You can't serve God and mammon. So he was unfaithful to look after his master's money. That's the illustration. Okay. So we can say, oh, that's just an illustration, but it's a fact also. Because if I won't look after my boss's money, how could God give me money? You see, so it is literal as well. Of course, the principle will apply to everyone, but it's actually to stewards. They're not servants. Is much higher than a servant, a steward, I'll explain. So it was to disciples, it was to those who God had given accountability, a job. But the principle will apply to us all if we're just a common or garden Christian, if we're saved by faith. The principle applies to us, but actually the parable was to disciples and those who were going to look after God's heritage, because that's what a steward did. I'll tell you what a steward is. In Bible days, a steward was more not a servant, but a manager. He was entrusted with running his master's affairs. So like Joseph with Potiphar, he looked after everything. Potiphar didn't know what was going on. He handled the finance. He controlled the servants. So he's higher than a servant. He controlled the servants. He looked after the stock for the food. He looked after those who were running the animals and the kingdom. He was under the master as a manager. And if you look it up, on the internet, what a steward was in those days, he looked after the business, and sometimes even the master's children. He was steward of the children. He made sure they were educated and looked after them. Obviously, the master had to be a very rich man to have a steward and servants under him. But then a pastor has deacons and people under him, so it's a parallel, isn't it? Those in leadership in the church, they've got people under their managers, deacons, elders, and then the common people. So this parable is aimed at those with responsibility. It's not aimed at the servants. They've got to be faithful. Of course, the principle applies to everyone, but we need to know who the parable was addressed to. And it's about covetousness and riches, isn't it? Because mammon isn't money, because money's neutral. It's the love of money. Mm-hmm. So when Jesus uses the word mammon, it's like a slang term. It's like greed, the love of money. It can't be money itself, can it? It's the accumulation of riches, greed. Well, ministers are stewards of God's heritage. It tells us in the Bible a minister is a steward. So that's what a steward was in those days. Let's read it. Paul warns stewards in the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Let a man so account of us as ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. So Paul said, I'm a steward. There's lots of people under Paul. He was an apostle, because that's who we're talking about fundamentally, those in leadership. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Can you see? A steward has to be accountable. You can't just be a pastor or an apostle and a prophet and think, well, I just do what God says. And well, of course you do what God says, but you're going to have to account to God. Many apostles and prophets, they say, oh, well, I account to God, but actually they do what they want and think that God will back them. It's not like that. You're going to have to give an account. So there's Paul warning that a pastor, an apostle, a teacher, that includes me, it's required that a man's found faithful. But Peter also talks about it. Let's read what Peter says. 1 Peter 4, verse 10. As every man has received a gift, even so the minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If you're a leader, you're a steward of the grace of God. Be careful how you use it. You need to be graceful, don't you? Be careful how you administer the grace that you've received. And 1 Peter 5 is warning the leaders, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples of the flock. You know, so many pastors can be spiritual dictators. I call them Pentecostal popes, some of them. You know, I'm the head, you've got to believe me. Neither being lords over God's heritage. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. There's a wonderful reward for those with responsibilities, but there's a judgment and a penalty for those who don't. That's why he says to the church, don't seek to be teachers. Don't seek to be in a position, because you'll have to answer for more. Much is given, much will be required. So there's great rewards, a crown of life, but there's also punishments if not. So it's a warning to unfaithful ministers who abuse the privilege of authority and power. A warning that they'll have to give an account. Surely the master is God, and the stewards are those he's appointed to look after his affairs. Well, it's about money, isn't it? Finance. Because I believe that finance is the biggest snare to a man of God. Mammon, the love of money. You know, sexual sins are also a snare to a man of God. We know that. But the sexual sins are a consequence, not the root. And it's pride. We've been talking a bit before we've filmed this with those who are in the studio about pride and how it comes in so many times in our life. Well, you know, when you have success as a man of God, pride comes in. Success is the biggest snare, because financial benefits come when you're successful. Finance follows. If you're successful in business, if you're successful in sport, if you're successful in ministry, finance comes in. If you've got a big church, 1,000 people, if half of them tie 500 people giving 1/10 of their income, you're talking about a lot of money coming into your church. That's why ministers want big churches. It's not only to save souls. They know it'll be successful. And with success comes money and fame. And the sexual sins are a consequence of that pride. You forget. Because a humble man won't commit adultery. It's a proud man. He can handle it. I can deceive my wife for a start. A humble man thinks, I'll never deceive my wife. She sees through me. But a proud man thinks I can get away with it. Can you see how pride, it permeates every single sin we do? I think there's no sin without pride in it. Think about it. I'll murder him because I'm better than he. Doesn't deserve to live. Well, you don't deserve to live. You deserve the lake of fire, murderer. But you think, he doesn't deserve to live, I'll kill him. Can you see it's pride? It comes into every single sin. I've looked at it, and people say, I don't think the root of every sin is pride. But I'm convinced it is. Think about it sensibly. It's Arthur Burt is passed on now. He used to say that damnable thing called pride. That damnable thing called pride. It's in everything. Eve, the first sin was pride. I'll do what I want. God says don't eat it, but I don't care. I want to be like God. I'll do it anyway. The first women's liver. I don't do what my husband said. My husband told me God says we can't eat the fruit, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's pride, isn't it? Selfish pride. I'll do what I want. You're proud. We're supposed to only do what God wants. Jesus never did anything that he wanted. That's why he was humble. I've only done what the Father showed me. I've done nothing of myself, because self is pride. So don't tell me you've not got pride, Christians, when you please yourself in so many areas. Yes. It's scary, isn't it? And I'm preaching to myself because I like to please myself. I like to do what I want. I hope my wife likes it. And I hope my wife's backs me up, but I like to get my own way, don't you?
Yes.
Something wrong with if you don't, you need translating. You're not real. You've not seen yourself yet. I'm getting carried away. Back to my notes. So I believe that's the biggest snare. 1 Timothy 6 verse 9. What I say, I hope I can back it with scripture, everything I say. This is what Paul says to a Timothy. Now Timothy's one of the stewards, a young minister, isn't he? So let me read 1 Timothy 6:9. This is what Paul said to Timothy, a young minister, a steward. They that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare. So it backs up what I said. If you want to be rich, you'll fall into temptation and a snare. It'll trap you and into many foolish and hurtful lust. That's the sexual sins, the consequences, which drown men in destruction and perdition. Perdition's the same word as damnation. It'll damn you. That's strong, isn't it? For a minister. Drown men in destruction and damnation. Wow. You see, we're not in the Old Covenant. In the Old Testament, if you please God, God would make you rich. He'd give you many wives, thousands of cattle. Prosperity was to do with pleasing God in the Old Covenant, but it's changed now. We're in the New Covenant, and there's nothing about blessing when you're obedient in the New Covenant. In fact, all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. All the apostles were martyred. They didn't end up as millionaires, did they? And businessmen. And friends of presidents. Did they? They all got martyred. Can you see the difference? The church want to be in the Old Covenant when it suits them to be rich and then pick the nice scriptures out of the New. We're not in the Old. You can't use that for your doctrine. There's examples. And it'll happen in the millennium. Well done, good and faithful. Be over 10 cities. We'll be back to blessing again because we're under the law in the millennium, aren't we? Jesus will rule with a rod of iron. That's not grace, is it? A rod of iron. That's, to me, military dictatorship. Well, Paul tells Timothy, let me read the verse before the one I just read. 1 Timothy 6, verse 8. And having food and raiment, let us be content therewith. He's not talking about businessmen, Christian businessmen. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking about a man of God, somebody who's God's put over his heritage. You've got to live like the apostles and like Jesus. Or else, be rich, get out of the ministry and make your millions. That's all right. But if you're a man of God with food and be content, you're working for God. It's a snare, you see, in the ministry. Well, we've not started the parable. Let's go through it. Let's go through the parable. This steward had been unfaithful, hadn't he, with his master's goods. And it was reported to the master. That steward is but unfaithful. He's been obviously cheating or doing something. And the master said, you're going to be out of a job. Give an account. So before he had to give an account, he knew he'd have to give an account, like we know we're going to have to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. So what did he do? He tried to make amends. How can a minister justify spending $5 million on a beautiful building with plush seats like a cinema and wonderful decor when people in his neighbourhood haven't got food and clothes? Those mega churches in America, they're in big cities. They're never in the country. They're in Toronto or Dallas or big cities. And in those cities, there's slums and there's poor people who are on food banks. And they're spending $10 million on a beautiful building. And God doesn't dwell in buildings. We're the church. How can they justify that? How can a church in England justify spending £30,000 on a PA system when people in the third world are being beaten up, Christians, our brothers and sisters are being beaten up now in the third world, and we're spending £30,000 to entertain Christians. Because that's what it is, PA system and the flashing lights and the smoke and the dancing girls at the front. It's entertainment. We're spending all that money on entertainment, and people in China and all these places, Iran and Iraq and Saudi Arabia, they're being imprisoned and tortured. Of course, we don't care about them because we're in the West. But how can a man of God justify it? I don't think he can, do you? Well, good news for those ministers. If you've been wasting your master's goods, if you've been misappropriating funds, which I believe it is, people have given money for God's work and you're spending it on things instead of people. Because God saves people, not buildings. God doesn't save the PA system. That's immaterial. I've got good news. This steward was recommended because he did something. So we need to find what he did, don't we? Because he was recommended by his master. So we've got good news. It's not the end, is it? Well, this is a revelation I got. I'll tell you about a steward that I didn't know. A steward in the first century, you can check it up, he didn't receive a wage. He was allowed to add his commission on debts. He handled his master's affairs. So if his master was a vineyard owner, you know, all the people, and obviously this master had corn and oil and wine because those are other commodities. He was allowed to add his commission on. So say somebody had 1,000 bushels of wheat. Say the debt was £5,000. The steward would add his commission on. So imagine he could add £1,000 on as commission. That was his wage. So he added it on. The man who had the debt wouldn't know what the principal sum was. He would just say, it's, what did I say, 5,000. So it's 5,000. So it's 6,000. The debt is 6,000 for those goods. So the man who owed the 6,000 wouldn't know what it really cost because he's paying the cost plus the commission. That's how a steward earned his living, by adding on commission. So this man obviously added exorbitant amounts on the principal debt. So instead of 5,000 plus 1,000, he probably said it's £10,000 because I'll have £5,000 for myself. He was a greedy man. Can you see how he was taking advantage of his position? So now it makes sense. So he knew he'd be dismissed because his boss would say, "You're ripping them off. I only wanted £5,000 and you've charged £10,000. You're ripping them off. You're misrepresenting me. Add a fair commission on, that's all right, but that's wrong." So what did he do? So he went round to his debtors and he said, "How much do you owe?" And he said 10,000. So he said, "Write a cheque for 5,000 and we'll call it quits." So he actually wasn't deceiving his master. His master got everything that was owed. He just took off his exorbitant commission. Do you see? So that's why his master commended him, because he's got all the money. He just lost his commission, or only had a bit. Maybe he added on just what he should have had, 5 or 10%. So the master was happy. He couldn't be happy if he only gave 50% of his master's debt, could he? I used to think, well, a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. So his master was happy because at least he got half, you know, because my boss told me you can't bank promises. So if you owe a debt, it's a promise, isn't it? When I used to get a cheque off a customer, the boss says, "Get it in the next hour. Don't wait till the next day. Go and take the cheque to the bank." Because you can't bank promises. It's only a promissory note. You haven't got the money. People think they've paid. Well, I've given him a cheque. I've paid it. No, you haven't. Until the cash checks, you've not paid. It's just a promissory note, isn't it? So he said, you can't bank cheques. And I learnt that. So that's how I fudged it, because I thought, well, there must be some reason why his boss commended him. But now I can see. The boss got all his money. He wasn't fiddling his boss at all. He was just trying to make friends of the debtors. Because if you thought you owed £10,000, and then he says, how much do you owe? 10,000. Write 5,000 and I'll cancel the debt. He saved £5,000, so it's wow. So when he gets sacked, he can go to them and say, have you got any jobs? Yeah, of course, you can work for me. You saved me £5,000. Can you see how we made friends? So it all makes sense now. And for 30 years, I've not known about stewards, so I didn't understand. So he acted wisely, didn't he? So here's good news. If we fail, we can make up for lost time. You know, if you've been a bad steward, you can take up your cross, can't you? Deny yourself and follow him. The rest of your life starts tomorrow. If you've been a bad pastor, a bad husband, a bad boss at work, whatever it is, you can start again, or a bad wife, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can start again. You're not a failure. You're only a failure if you stay as you are. If you've fallen, I've fallen, I've been a bad wife, a bad husband, I've been a bad boss. That's not a failure. The failure is when you stay a bad. But if you think I'm going to change and you make amends to change and fall and try, it's a process, isn't it? Then you're not a failure. So you can redeem yourself. You know, the Bible talks about that. Ephesians chapter 5. Let's move on. Let's put our failures behind us. Don't look back. There's nothing behind you. Don't look back. Leave the past behind you. Put your trembling hand in mine, God says, and turn your face into the wind, the adversity that's coming, and don't look back, my beloved. Don't look back. Following Jesus is a walk forward. It's not standing still, and it's not looking back and saying, I've failed. It's moving on, isn't it? It's tough. It's tough because we do fail, don't we? We do have disappointments. But we've got to, well, that's what the brethren's for, to encourage us and say, come on. You know, it doesn't matter about what's happened. Your life starts now. Let's move on. Ephesians 5. Wake up, shake yourself. This is what Ephesians 5 says, 14 to 16. Paul trying to encourage us. Wherefore, God says, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Revelation. See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools. This man was a fool. He tried to fiddle his boss, but wise. He was wise because he redeemed himself, redeeming the time. So you can redeem your lost debts. You can redeem time. Oh, I've wasted 20 years. No, you haven't if you make up for them. You know, if you've wasted 10 years, you've got 10 years more. If you work twice as hard, you've redeemed those 10 years, haven't you? Because you've got the same results as if you've worked normally for 20 years. So let's get our act, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Now we see the race is nearly run. You know, I used to run the mile for the school. I'm not very tall, but I did have a lot of stamina. So I was no good with the 100 metres because you need to be big shoulders, you know, and you need to... I could never compete with 100 metres. I could never run the 3 mile because a man with tall legs would always outrun me. But I could run flat out for a mile. I had a lot of stamina. So I couldn't beat a man who run flat out with longer legs. But, you know, I represented the school. I ran the mile. But you pace yourself, don't you? You run and you don't burn yourself out. You get your second win. And when you see the winning post, when you know you're on the last lap, you give it everything you've got, because it doesn't matter if you fall over the line and you're exhausted and lay there for 10 minutes. It doesn't matter. So give it your all. We've just sang so much the more as we see the day. Can you not see that we're near the end? That we could be the generation that see Jesus come and the man of sin and the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. I don't think I'm scaremongering. It's possible. I'm not saying it will happen in our generation, but it's very possible. Well, let's redeem the time then. Let's work hard. And I think, you know, we're talking about stewards, so we're talking about pastors, apostles, leaders, prophets, teachers. But let's get personal. Every one of us. We can redeem the time. We can make up for lost time, can't we? If we're bad stewards, you know, how much have you fed the poor? How much have you looked after the persecuted? Or would you spend the money on a new carpet when you don't really need one, just you're sick of it? You know, we spend a lot of money on things when maybe we should be spending more on people, because things will all get burnt up, people won't. What about the persecuted church? I'm not asking for your money for Barrack Ministries. God looks after us whether you do or not. We're grateful for every donation, but I don't rely on people, I rely on God. I'm in the ministry, a man of God. But what about my brothers and sisters? Surely we waste so much money on cars. Do you need as big a car? Do you need a new car every so often? I'm just throwing out things. We can spend a lot of money and we're not being good stewards, because we'll have to give an account. So that's just a challenge to every Christian. I mainly want to appeal to ministers on this video, because, there's not many that are directed to stewards. Jonah's a good example. He disobeyed God. He's a prophet and he disobeyed God. But he redeemed himself. He ended up doing God's will, didn't he? Nineveh repented. Did he achieve God's will? So he's a good example of somebody. And he failed and he ran away. Jonas was under God and God says, do this. And he was frightened. He was fearful. He didn't have faith. And he ran away and hid, as he thought. Hid from the presence of the Lord. But he ended up doing God's will. Think about that illustration that Jesus gave. 2 brothers. And the dad said to one, go and work in my field. And he said, yes, Father. But he didn't do it. And he said to the other son, go and work in my field. He said, no way, I'm not working in your field. But then he repented and did it. He redeemed himself, made up for lost time, because he'd missed all that time he hadn't worked. He went and worked in the Father's field. And Jesus said, which one did the will of the Father? The one who said yes at first, or the one who said no? The one who said no actually did the will. So can you see? It's a good message, because we can redeem ourselves. We can make up for lost time. And then Jesus makes a strange statement. Luke 16 verse 8. We've read it in the parable. It's part of the dialogue after the parable. And the Lord commended the unjust steward because he'd done wisely. I never understood that before, but I understand now he'd been wise. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. They somehow know how to redeem themselves. Christians don't seem to know. They think because they're saved, well, there's no account. I've got grace, I'm saved, I've got eternal life. I've been amazed that God's children don't seem to have a fear of accountability. They think, well, I've got grace, I'm saved. Yeah, but we'll all have to stand before the judgment seat of Christ to account for deeds done in the body. That's how you've lived as a Christian. That's what Paul said. Why don't people preach it? But they think, well, I'm saved, there's no accountability. God will wink at me unfaithfulness. Well, it's all right, I've got grace. God doesn't wink at anything. What does Paul say? At times past, God winked at us, but now he commands men everywhere to repent. God won't wink anymore. That's what Paul said. He did wink in the past. They were under the law. There's no more. God will not wink at anything. You've got to account for. What does Jesus say? You'll have to give an account for every idle word. Idle means wasted, useless. Every idle word you'll have to give an account for, because by your words you'll be condemned and by your words you'll be justified. Is that tough? No, because your words are what comes from your heart. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what you speak is revealing your heart. So every idle heart, voice. So an idle tongue is an idle heart, isn't it? An angry tongue is an angry heart. It's no point saying, well, I didn't really mean it. If it came out of your mouth, that venom, that's in your heart. It can't come out if it's not in, can it? The pressure brings what's in out. Own it. Say, that's me. I'm sorry, I said it. Own it. Don't pretend it wasn't you. Don't say I didn't mean it. You meant it at the time because it came out of your mouth. That means it was in your heart. Just own it. It's all right. There's forgiveness, isn't there? We've just got to own it. That's the hard thing, because we're proud. We don't want to say, that's me. I'm not really like that. It was only because of him. It was only because of her. It was only if the pastor hadn't said it, I wouldn't have done it. You did it. Just own it. It's all right. The truth will make you free. You know, people quote it, the truth will set you free. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say the truth will set you free. I'll tell you the difference between being set free and made free. If you put a bird in a cage and you open the door, he flies out, he's set free. That's like salvation. You're set free, aren't you? Suddenly, it's instant. You accept Jesus and you're set free. To be made free, made is a process. I made this desk I made this studio, so it took time. You can't make something instantly. There's no such thing. You can't make a pie instantly, can you? It's a process. So people misquote it. The truth will make you free. It'll start the process. Admitting the truth, oh, that was me. That won't set you free. You'll have to say it 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times. But it's a process. The sin of the church is that it won't start the process. We're proud and we say, well, I didn't mean it, or it wasn't me. I don't know what got hold of me. It came out of you. So, start the process. It'll make you free. Romans 2, verse 3 to 6. Just some illustrations of accountability. This is for all Christians. And thinkest this, O man, that judgest them which do such things? He's talking about judging another Christian. And doest the same, because you only judge them out of your own heart. What you'd do. If you wouldn't do it, you wouldn't judge somebody else was. You think, I know they're cunning. It's because you're capable of being cunning. A man with no guile wouldn't judge another man. So we expose ourselves. Which do such things and doest the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of God. Or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and longsuffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leadeth thee to repentance? But after thy hardness and impenitent heart treasurest up unto thyself wrath. This is talking to Christians. Anger, wrath, against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God. God's going to judge us one day, who will render to every man according to his faith. No, not according to that salvation, according to your faith. The rewards are according to your deeds, who will render to every man according to his deeds. We're saved by faith, but your rewards are punishment, the kingdom's by your deeds, how you live. And 2 Corinthians 5 verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, I've quoted this, that everyone may receive the things done in his body. What's that got to do with faith? Nothing. That everyone may receive the things done in his body according that he hath done, what you do, whether a good or bad, not what you believe, what you do. People think Christianity, I don't like the word because Christianity is a religion, but I'm using it. Christianity is not what you believe. We think, oh, I believe in God. Yeah, bully for you, so does the devil. It's what you do. We sang a chorus just before we went on air. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Then verse 6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. For they must believe that he is. But it doesn't finish there. The devil believes that he is. People think, well, I believe that God is. That faith doesn't please God. That you believe in God does not please God. Because the devil believes in God and it's no faith. And God's not pleased with him. You've got to read the second part. That believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. If you don't believe he rewards those who seek him, you'll never seek him. Well, I've got my salvation, so it's all right. Seeking his work. Seeking is you can't seek sitting. If you're looking for something, you're moving about, aren't they? Ask, seek, knock. It's a progression. You can ask sitting. But when you're seeking, you're moving, you're looking. I'm coming to a close. Well, Jesus refers back to finance again before he finishes. Luke 16 verse 10 to 12. He says, if you're not faithful with money, God won't trust you with true riches. Let me read it. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Didn't your granny tell you that? Look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. Everyone's granny says that. She gets that from the Bible, you know. If you can't look after that which is least, the penny, it was a farthing in my day, wasn't it? Do you remember what a farthing was like with a little robin on it? All right. You'll not be faithful with the pounds. So it comes from the Bible. It's a principle. You've got to be diligent with your money. Go on, next verse. If therefore you've not been faithful in unrighteous mammon, so that's his money, filthy lucre, who will commit to your trust the true riches? How can God bless you? And if you've not been faithful in that which is another man's, everything you've received is another man's. Isn't it not? You come into the world with nothing, and your parents clothed you. And who gave you the ability to work and earn money? Did the talent not come from God? Did the business acumen not come from God? Did the skill not come from God? God gave you everything you've got. You're a steward of what God's given you. Woe betide you if you don't use it. You know, the devil doesn't give you a business acumen. The devil doesn't give you talents. God gives them. You're born with them. The devil can use them or God can use them. You've got to make sure God uses your business acumen, your talent, for whatever it is. And if you've not been faithful in that which is another man's, who will give you that which is your own? Then he says, this no man can serve two masters. So that's scary. There's only two choices. You're either serving God or the love of money in whatever form it comes. That's a choice. He doesn't say you can't serve God and Satan. That's what he'd say to the world. Those who have not accepted Jesus, they're either serving God or they're serving the God of this world, Satan. But when you're a Christian, the choice isn't God or Satan. The choice is God or materialism, God and riches, God and the love of money. Scary. No man can serve two masters. He'll hate one and love the other. That's the extreme. Or he'll hold to one and despise the other. So it's degrees. The more you love one, the more you'll hate the other. So if you only hold on to God, you'll despise riches. But if you love God passionately, you'll hate filthy lucre. You'll use it, but you won't want to be contaminated with it. You'll know it's a good servant, but a terrible master. It contaminates. You can't serve God and mammon. It's fundamental, isn't it? So if you count yourself a minister of God, you need to take these words seriously. Not my words. I've only explained, I hope, what Jesus said. You need to think seriously about what Jesus said, because you're going to have to give an account for your stewardship. So although the parable's addressed to ministers, we can all be challenged. I was challenged, because we'll all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. So I think I've said everything I need to do. Sober study, isn't it? But then all the parables are sober, because Jesus wants to get to the bottom. He wants to prepare the bride. So let me pray for us all. Father, you've made me a steward, Lord, because I'm teaching people. And so I pray, Father, that you'll expose me. See if there's any wicked way in me. Purge me with hyssop. Know my heart. Search me and know my heart today. And for anyone who's honest and open, Lord, who are ministers of the gospel, I pray that they'll examine how they use finance, how they use the fame and the means to get finance. What's the motive behind building the church? And for the majority, Lord, who are servants, the same applies, because everything we have came from you. We're stewards of our health, of our bodies, of our husband, of our children, of our car and our house. Help us to be wise, Lord, and if we've not been wise in the past, help us to redeem the time. Help us to be wise. that we may hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful." I ask this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. Look forward to going through another parable with you. Have a wonderful week. God bless.